I'm only in my early 20s, but my hair is completely white. It always has been, and the same goes for my parents, siblings, and other close relatives. It's something of a marker, I guess. A few weeks ago, I inherited my great-grandfather's mansion. Though I was never too close to him, I knew enough about the man that I felt tainted just standing in his oversized castle of a home. Nevertheless, I was soon coaxed into accepting the inheritance that he had left me. Among the wealth and property I had been given, I also inherited my great-grandfather's staff. I've been here nearly 2 weeks and yet I haven't been bothered to really get to know any of them. I don't feel comfortable being in the company of people who haven't aged a day in 80 years. Reluctantly, I'm closest with my butler, Sam. He doesn't look a day over 30, yet you can spot him in plenty of photographs from the Great Depression. As you might have guessed, he's not quite human. He's closer to a demon, though that's not really a correct label either. The world would be a better place if none of them existed, yet I find myself surrounded by them. I was never given a choice, and you may wonder how a spoiled individual such as myself can be so dissatisfied when given a world of luxury. You see, I've been forced to take part in a business that could easily be severely understated as unethical. According to the FBI, there were 15,696 homicides in the United States in 2015. The actual number is considerably higher, though I can't specifically say by how much. Many of the homicides recorded are due to gang-related violence. The ones that usually go unnoticed, however, involve the bidding of my relatives. In fact, you might have lost a friend because of us, but you might not remember. If we want you to forget they ever existed, we can do that. We can even erase your mother's memory of ever even giving birth to you. Personally, I hate being the third son in a family of devils. If I could, I would erase our existence as well. But Sam would never allow me to even take the first step. I've killed 16 people in the 2 weeks that I've lived here. And no, none of them were the nicest guy or that kid who aspired to be a doctor. Among them were sex traffickers, pedophiles, hitmen, and a drug lord. I didn't witness their deaths, but Sam did. My butler is quite fond of finding creative ways to end lives. He hands me graphic photographs of every person he kills. It's different from watching a horror movie. Watching some actor or actress playing dead with fake insides spilled out doesn't really have the same sort of impact as seeing an actual mutilated corpse. Earlier today, Sam entered my bedroom and handed me another photo. I refused to look at it at that time. I can't stomach seeing another person missing their skin or being hung with their own intestines. What frightens me most, though, is the prospect of becoming numb to it. Perhaps you're wondering why I would feel any sort of pity or remorse for the deaths of such awful people. I don't, that's not the point. The other day I was standing in line at a coffee shop. Some woman in her 30s was giving the barista a hard time for some reason. I didn't pay attention to the specifics, but she hit below the belt on that poor kid quite a few times. In the end, she got her latte and an undeserved apology. Later that day, she ended up in a serious car accident, and now she's lying in a coma in a hospital somewhere. I asked my personal chauffeur to crash into her, but not kill her. At the moment, it's unlikely she'll ever wake up. The woman has no criminal record. She worked as a secretary at some office downtown and was apparently in a hurry to get the latte for her boss. She was raising a son by herself, but now he's being looked after by his aunt and uncle. He's been visiting her in the hospital every day since the accident. I'm the reason that kid is losing his mother, and it's all because I didn't like her attitude. I've spent the last several days trying to keep to myself. Sam occasionally enters my bedroom to serve me meals. I lost my appetite today after he tried to show me his most recent kill. I asked for that specific target to be killed about the day before I called for that car crash. Sam put it off until last night because he was waiting for the perfect moment. It was the highest profile hit I've called on someone so far. But you'll never hear about it on the news. If you've heard of him before, you'd already have forgotten about his name anyway now. The mansion I've inherited has numerous secret rooms. I was given a tour of some of them on my first day here. Among these is a punishment room. My great-grandfather used to trap souls of those he killed in there. I let them free the day I decided to move in. Many of them will be going somewhere much worse, though. There's also a so-called meeting room, and that's what I'll be telling you about today. It was a few hours after Sam tried to show me that photograph. I let him give his signature knock 4 times before finally allowing him in. "We have some unexpected visitors in the meeting room, my dear Zachary." That grin. For some reason, when he stared at me like that, I always assumed that his head would turn into a giant mouth and he'd eat me. In the 2 weeks that I'd known him, though, he'd never been any less than an impeccable butler. Behind the facade was something much worse, though. And quite frankly, the guy scares the hell out of me. Reluctantly, I stood up from my desk and followed him into the hall. The meeting room is on another floor. I prefer not to stay too close to any of the secret rooms. I don't think I'll ever get used to some of the noises I've heard coming out of them. Who's it today? My tone was that of a child fed up with a long road trip. I believe you'll be rather fond of today's guest. She's been looking very forward to meeting you, dear Zachary. I gave no response, doubtful that anything good would come out of the meeting. A minute later, we arrived at the barely visible door in the hall. Sam pulled it open and gestured for me to go inside. Today, the room was a vast restaurant with almost all tables occupied. Despite the size of the crowd, the room was completely silent. People chatted, but I could not hear anything. The clanking of cutlery, plates being served to customers, none of it made a sound. About 10 seconds later, I heard the exception in the room.
Oh, yeah.
I turned and looked over to the table where one person had called out to me. Her skin was maroon-colored, and her eyes were purple. She had long, shiny black hair, and I would be lying if I said that she was anything less than a knockout. She was in a purple dress and wore a gold necklace. I found myself smiling as though someone was pulling at my lips. As soon as she noticed me, she flashed a perfectly white row of teeth, although they were all sharp and pointy. As expected, she wasn't human. "You really are quite handsome," she told me in a confident, jubilant tone. While speaking, she made a hand gesture which was all too familiar. She placed her palms forward, placing her right hand behind her left. Her thumbs made an X shape underneath. It was a symbol of loyalty to an organization called the Order of the Singing Raven. My ancestors were among its founders. I refrained from doing the same and took a seat across from her. "You're quite a sharp dresser. How charming." I looked down and noticed I was dressed in a business suit with a red undershirt and a black tie. When I entered the room, I was still in my pajamas. Sam made sure I never had to worry about dressing appropriately. "So who are you?" My guest didn't care whether or not I was polite, so I didn't bother. "I go by Sarajevo." She flashed another sharp-toothed grin. "It's an absolute delight to meet Jacob's successor." I wondered how close she'd been with my great-grandfather, but I didn't want to stay for too long. The abnormal silence was haunting. "What do you want?" "A little company and a place to stay." "As in my home?" "There's no better place in your world, and I'll require a great deal of space." "Get out of here." That's what I wanted to tell her, until Sam appeared standing next to our table. "Lord Zachary and I would be delighted to share the mansion with such a ravishing young lady." I stared angrily at Sam as he smirked back at me. And what if I refused? Both Sam and Sarajevo laughed. "Then I'm afraid you won't be able to keep me in check." "What do you mean by that?" "I'm here to help you dispose of your targets." Before she could add any more, a quartet of gray-skinned waiters with horns came along carrying a tray with a naked, hairless man whose hands and feet were bound behind his back. He was already dead and his skin appeared to have been boiled. I nearly fell out of my chair, which was caught by Sam. Sarajevo stared enthusiastically at the boiled, naked man, letting out a small, excited screech. Our table had tripled in length without me realizing. They placed the massive tray between us, leaving me barely able to hold back my vomit. "Last night's target," said Sam as he handed me a glass of water. Sarajevo leaned in, giving the boiled man a long sniff. "My goodness, what a truly despicable man he was in life. The worse they were, the better they taste." She then pulled off his right arm like the wing off a fly. My brief retraction to her relinquished entirely once she sank her teeth in, ripping out a chunk of flesh. I closed my eyes and turned my head away. I felt Sam's hand gently rub my upper back. "Easy now, dear Zachary. The young lady is merely enjoying her meal." "I said mostly from the world for the proof of the people I eat." Based on the sound of her voice, she was still chewing. I covered my mouth with a cloth napkin, though nothing came out. Still, I was utterly sick to my stomach. Her chewing noises were loud and wet. I doubted that I would eat anything for the rest of the day, or even tomorrow. Less than 2 minutes later, I heard the long tray being lifted and removed from our table. Slowly, I allowed my eyes back open. Despite the disgusting noises, her face was perfectly clean. "I apologize for being a bit of an animal when I eat." "What does staying in my mansion have to do with eating people?" "It's a wonderful way to lure and prey. You're quite well known amongst many particularly delicious people. I have quite an appetite and you have quite a problem with such people in your region. You and I could make quite a duo if you're willing. The young lady shares your goal of thinning out all the human waste you've been ordering me to deal with," added Sam. "I want them all dead. When I accepted the mansion, I assumed I'd be in a position where I could wipe out every career criminal in this state. Sam won't let me go that far. Had I known there would be such limitations, I might have tried harder to run away from the life I now have. You want me to invite student-type criminals over so that you can eat them? Sarajevo grinned. There's so much more I can be for you, Zachary. There are several bedrooms on the ground floor. One of them is near a ballroom that I don't use. You can have that one. She let out a strange, inhuman squeal. Yes, thank you. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to stay in this mansion again. Again? I was a little curious now as to how well she knew my great-grandfather. We headed back out into the hallway a few minutes later. I had Sam escort her to her bedroom while I headed back to my own. As promised, I've invited several guests over tonight. There are a group of henchmen in my city known as the Barbershop Quartet. Think of some of the horrific murders you've heard about being carried out by drug cartels. To the Barbershop Quartet, murder is an art form. Even the people who hire them are terrified and won't work with them directly. I now find myself inviting these sadists into my house. They've been targets of mine ever since Sam told me about them. For some reason he's been reluctant to deal with them, even though I know he's more than capable. Today though, he's going through with it. Since Sarajevo showed up, he's much more fond of taking care of them. I don't want to get involved, but they're coming here under the assumption I have a job for them. My great-grandfather hired them on a number of occasions during his final decade. As far as I know, they're unaware of what I've been doing to the rest of the scum in this area. Those 16 people I've killed have been erased from memory to all of those who knew them. By tonight, no one will have ever heard of the Barbershop Quartet. Still, I wish my life did not revolve around disposing of bad apples. I want to get out more. I want to spend time with friends whom I'd fear Sam is going to try and coax me into killing. He insists I'll call for such an order one day. He's probably right. That woman is still lying in a coma after all because of me. I don't take any pride in what I'm doing, but I think there are perfectly valid reasons that the people that I kill should not be allowed to wake up tomorrow. This is the path I chose, but I'm already wondering what I must have been thinking when I finally agreed to this.